Okay. I would imagine, a good Yom Tov, everyone, a good afternoon. Or for you, it's good evening. For me, it's still afternoon, and it's really Tu B'Av, the Chamishas of B'Av. And by you, it's already going into the 16th of Av, but in Kedusha, the night goes after the day. I think we are right now, at 8 o'clock your time, which is a good time to start because what we're going to do today is we're going to learn the famous Sikha from the Rebbe on Beis Rabbeinu Sheba Bavel, and it's connected to the 15th of Av because, as it says on the flyer, the 15th of Av, as the Rebbe says, is Meir the Giluyim de La'asid. It shines the revelations of the future, which means that this is a day connected to Mashiach more than the rest of the year. I would say, I mentioned it in another class, that probably the only other day that is so Mashiach, like the 15th of Av, is Achron Shel Pesach, when it's made Ha'aris Mashiach. And the Mamorim, it explains that the Maila of the 15th of Av, Chamishas B'Av, is that it is a tikkun on Tisha B'Av. It's the Aliyas HaMalchus, the elevation of Malchus after her nefila, after her fall on Tisha B'Av. Shleimus Alavana, the completion of the moon. And that is the Geula Asid. So therefore, this is a day that has Mashiach energy more than any other day of the year. And the Rebbe says that the Iker Giluyim de La'asid are Shayach to the Beis HaMikdash HaShlishi, are connected to the third Beis HaMikdash. In other words, in Mashiach's coming, there's a lot of inyanim. There is Melech HaMashiach, there is Beis HaMikdash HaShlishi, and so on and so forth. The Rebbe explains that in many ways, sometimes the Rebbe says it's the Iker Inyan of Mashiach to the future is Melech HaMashiach. And I would say perhaps that's more the emphasis on Achron Shel Pesach. When it says it's Meir Ha'aris Mashiach, it means the person Mashiach. And on Chamishas B'Av, the Marsha, the Rebbe brings from the Marsha and the Sikh of Pashas Devarim, that all the inyanim that are mentioned about the quality of the 15th of Av as being a great yontiv are shayches to the Beis HaMikdash. So it's a very Beis HaMikdash day. Now, in light of this year, there's an extra special idea we have, which is very, very unique, in that the sikha that we're going to learn is, for those who've studied already, by the way, this sikha is a sikha that you can study many times. Now, every sikha is a one that you can learn many times. But there's, in this sikha, I see myself, ein beis medrash b'lo chidush. There's no beis hamedrash. When you said a beis hamedrash, there's no such a thing as a beis hamedrash when you learn, and there shouldn't be a chidush. There's always a chidush. So this sikha now, I just learned it today, and I found jewels and gems that I never saw in it, even though I taught this a few times already. But every time you learn it, there's new life. That's because of the person learning, that you have whatever. You learned it once, so you're clearer already with it, so you have more of it. Your brain is freer to delve deeper. But I think it's also mitzad the sikha itself. The Torah is alive. So every day it looks like the same book, but the content, the letters of it, the holiness of it is new every day. The Nasalanu as Torah said, it gives us the Torah. It's a new Torah every day. It's a vibrant Torah. It's a living Torah. So the words dance off the page in a different way. So you can always find something. There's a very important sikha to learn and learn many times, especially in our times. Now, in this sikha, the Rebbe is going to develop the importance and the significance of the third base of the idea of Ashras HaShechina B'zman HaGolus, that in the time of exile, the Shechina dwells amongst the Jewish people in a specific place. And that's called Migdash Ma'at. And he's going to reveal how the Migdash Ma'at is significant during the time of Golus, but the Iker at the time of the Geula, where the Migdash Ma'at transitions into the great Beis HaMikdash. In Golus, the Migdash Ma'at, the small Beis HaMikdash that we have during Golus, which is the general idea of a shul, and primarily it's the main shul, which we're going to see, the Rebbe is going to explain, is the idea of Beis Rabbeinu, which is the main shul of all shuls, which is the main place of Beis HaMikdash, Migdash Ma'at during the time of Golus. But then the Migdash Ma'at is also becomes very crucial and pivotal at the time of the Geula. and where this serves as the what lifts up all the Batei Midrash and all the Batei Knesiyos from the time of Galus and connected to the third base of English. Therefore, the Rebbe is going to emphasize very strongly, which is phenomenal. This is unbelievable chidushim over here, that his Galus of the third base of English is going to be in the primary Migdash Ma'at of the Galus, which is Beis Rabbeinu Shabbat. And the Rebbe in the end is going to lead it all to that's throughout all the generations. There's always one primary Migdash Ma'at during the entire duration of Galus. Primarily, the Rebbe says when it comes to the last generation and the last Migdash Ma'at, and the Rebbe is going to pin it to 770. So why is it special, extra special this year? Because this year, Yud Beis Av marks the anniversary just a few days ago, 3 days ago. It's interesting that 3 is considered loved. Halachically, 3 is considered connected. If you have a space that's less than 3 tvachim, it's considered connected. That's what we also know. For instance, Shabbos, there is a hamshacha of Shabbos. There is a continuation of Shabbos for the first 3 days of the week till Tuesday. And the next Shabbos begins already on Wednesday. So 3 days is still considered connected. And benegay to many things. So Yud Beis Av and Chamishasa B'Av, the 15th of Av, or like some people could refer to it as Tu B'Av, is deeply connected. The Yud Beis, Yud Gimel, Yud Dalet, and Yud Dalet leads into this one. Now Yud Beis is the day that the 770 was purchased. How many years ago? This year marks the 80th anniversary, and it was actually purchased for $80,000. Now the Mila that the Rebbe is going to be talking a lot about in this Sichas, we're going to see later, is the number 770. The number 7 is going to take a striking importance in the Sicha. Not so much the number 8, but it's interesting that what we're going to see that this year, which becomes the 80th year of its purchase, and it was purchased for $80,000. What a deal! And now, when did it become 80 years old? On Tafshin Pei. This year, 2020, was purchased then 80 years ago. That would be in 1940. The numbers 8 are also significant, as we're going to see in the Sikha itself, that the Rebbe is going to connect 770 to the one who purchased it, to Beis Rabbeinu. Who's the Rabbeinu who purchased it? The Frierdiker Rebbe. The Frierdiker Rebbe has 2 names, Yosef and Yitzchak. And the Rebbe is going to explain how the significance of the names Yosef and Yitzchak regarding to 770. But what's interesting is that the name Yosef is going to find more of a connection to the number 770. The name Yitzchak, the Rebbe brings his shaychus to the Geula mitzad the pasuk Oz Yemolei Schayk Pinu. Schayk is Yitzchak, laughter, Yitzchak. So Yitzchak is related to the laughter schayk, which it says regarding that Oz, then. Oz, the word Oz is referring to number 8. So you can say, again, this is what's occurring to me today, is that the Mila of Yosef is related to the numbers of 7. The Mila of Yitzchak is related more to the number of 8. We also know that Yitzchak, it's brought in Chassidus, is 8 times Yud Kei Vav Kei. Yitzchak is gematria 208. 8 times Hashem's name. Yitzchak is the first one who had his bris milah on 8 days. And so we can say, let me just make this is a little introduction to what we're saying, that 770, which the Rebbe is going to explain the Mila of 770 as the place that is the facility where the Makam HaMikdash, this is the Makam HaMikdash, where the third base of English is going to reveal itself. It's chidush, I'm telling you, there's wild stuff over here. But so there's 2 parts to it. There is number 7 and there's number 8. 7 represents the shleimus of the avodah in fixing the world. That's number 7. And that's what 770 is all about, as the last period of the time of Golus. What does the Rebbe always say about our generation? Our generation is the Achrein of Golus and the Rishon of the Geula. So we serve as both. It's not us being the Der Achrein Sheba Golus, it's more related to number 7. Again, this is Ulai Yesh Loimar, we can maybe say. More related to number 7, because the world is a world of 7, like the Rebbe is going to explain later in the Sikha, how 770 represents the perfection of reaching all 7 continents and reaching all elements of time and space, which is all divided in the number 7, all in its most perfected state, and that is all 770. Number 8 is shayach to the break 8 already is l'mayla menateva, breaking, paratzta lecha peretz, blasting the barriers of Golos. In other words, taking the Beis Hamikdash and breaking its boundaries, Ufaratzta, which is already comes after the 7. That's shaykh to number 8. In Mamish now, Tezvav, Yud Beis, within 3 days of the great Yom Tov of Chamashasa B'Av, 770 reached its 80th anniversary. And which means the connection of Uz of number 8 shaykh is to the second name of the Friedrich Rebbe Yitzchak, which is more shaykh. Yosef is more shaykh to the Friedrich Rebbe's work in gathering all the Jews and transforming the darkness to light. The Yitzchak is the laughter, Yemoisa Mashiach, that happens afterwards. And this is what we're holding right now. We're holding ready for the blasting of laughter that's going to happen. In any case, I don't want to make too much of that because we want to learn the Sikha inside. I do want to say that just in the last 24 hours, something big happened in the world. We obviously know. Something that is tragic in the sense that there's a loss of life, and we never celebrate the death of people, especially when it wasn't in a way that we know that it was an immediate threat that these people wanted to harm us. Mitzad Sheni, we also know that the Eibishter does very big miracles in a way that Afilu Baal HaNes Einu Makir B'Nisai, and even the Baal HaNes, even the one that the miracle happened to, many times doesn't know that the miracle happened to them. When something massive like this took place on Erev Tu B'Av in Eretz Yisrael, it was already Mamish peaking almost already the 15th of Av, Chamashasa B'Av, which is the day of the third Beis Hamikdash, Mashiach, the day, in a port run by Hezbollah, which Hezbollah is one of the greatest threats for the safety of the Jewish people. And what blew up was weapons. Now we know that those weapons, who they were intended to, and the fact that it blew up, and it did not chas v'shalom blow up on us, but it blew up over there, is a miracle she'en kamayu. And it's in a sense, there's many talk. I mean, people are beginning to find remazim on it, and it's shaykh to binyan Yerushalayim, because Yerushalayim will be built after a destruction of a leumazev, what's opposite of Yerushalayim. Now Rashi says that the opposite of Yerushalayim is the city of Tzur. The city of Tzur is when Yismael Tzur Elam Cherboinu Yerushalayim. That Tzur was built only from the destruction of Jerusalem, and therefore the Gemara says that when Tzur is destroyed, same idea, Yerushalayim is built. So what's Tzur? Tzur is not Beirut, but I looked it up. Tzur is a city called Tyre. In English, that's what it's called, and it's also on the coast in Lebanon, and it's a mere 50 miles. It's 81 kilometers from Beirut, so it's not too far. In other words, you could say a shaykhus. I'm not saying this is a definite, but the fact that it's happening right before Chamashasa B'Av in a year like 5780, which is a year that is Mashiach is dominating in such a powerful way in the world, it's likely to say that a very big miracle happened. And for that, we have to thank the Eibishter and ratchet up our Mashiach excitement. Okay, that's all I want to say as a Hakdama, and now we're ready to learn. So what I'm going to do is like this. Number one, if you have questions, and I'm sure there'll be many questions, please write them down, or you can type them in, but I'm not going to stop to answer the questions because I'm going to lose my train of thought, and it's going to stop the flow, and we want to do a completion. We want to do the entire base of Einu Sheba Bavel, complete it all. That's number one. And number two is, so then we'll try to take questions at the end. So you can send it now, but I'm going to stop. I'm going to do the question. And what I'm also going to try to do is I'm going to read a little bit inside, and I'm going to explain quite a lot of the Sikha, mostly Baal Peh, meaning outside. I'm going to be following the structure of the Sikha and then highlight certain parts again inside. I'm using a Lashon HaKodesh version of the Sikha. I don't know if the Sikha is out of Yiddish, or the one that I'm using is from Sefer Dvar Malchus, where the Kuntres base Beinu Sheba Bavel is printed. By me, it's on page 197. I forgot to discuss it with the hostess, which one she's going to be using, but I'm going to be notifying the Seifim. So if you need to put the Sefer on the screen, I'm now going to start the beginning. Sif Aleph, I'm going to read from inside, and then maybe Sif Beis and Sif Gimel, I'm just going to explain. Sif Daled, which I feel is very, very important and significant. I mean, every word over here is just, it's hard for me to choose, but I'm going to read again inside, and so on and so forth. Okay, so we're starting inside. Ala pasuk ve'eil lahem lemikdash ma'at ba'arotzos asher bo'u sham. It's a pasuk in Yechezkel. The pasuk says, "I will be to them a small base hamikdash in the lands where they will come over there." This is talking about the beginning of the Golus of Bavel. Hashem says, "I'm not going to forsake you, and I'm going to be from you for a small base hamikdash." So Shagam b'chutz li'aretz. What does that mean? That means that even in the chutz li'aretz, ba'arotzos asher bo'u sham, the lands that the Jewish people will come over there. The Makoimu Bisman Argolis, in the time and in the time and in the place and in the time of Golis, Yashna Migdash Ma'at. We should the Eberster is telling us that there is a small base hamikdash. We don't have the big base hamikdash, but we have a small base hamikdash. And what's the significance of the small base hamikdash? That it's me'ein v'dugmas hamikdash hagadol asher b'Yerushalayim. It is a little bit of, and it's similar to the great base hamikdash that is in Yerushalayim. This quote is from Targum Yonis, from Mitzudais David Alapas. Mitzudai says that when Hashem promises there's going to be a small Beis Hamikdash, it means it's me'ain. It's a little bit of the big Beis Hamikdash in Yerushalayim. And then he brings a lashon from Targum Yonis and Ben Azil, Tinyon lebeis Migdash. Tinyon means secondary to the Beis Hamikdash. There is the Beis Hamikdash, the grand Beis Hamikdash, and then there is a sheni, a second one to the Beis Hamikdash. So on this pasuk, Isa b'Gemara, this is a Gemara Masechtas Megillah. Gemara says, Amar Reb Yitzchak. Reb Yitzchak comments, what is it referring to? That there's going to be a small Beis Hamikdash in Bavel. So the small Beis Hamikdash is referring to all the shuls, Batei Knesiyos, and all the Batei Midrashes. Simple, what that means is, Batei Knesiyos is a shul, Batei Midrash is a yeshiva, a study hall. So the yeshivas and the shuls, a place of prayer and a place of study, these places, that's the Beis Hamikdash that Hashem is promising is going to be in the time of Golus. What it's referring to is Beis Rabbeinu Shevabavel. What does it mean, Beis Rabbeinu Shevabavel? The Rebbe brings over here in Ara 5. Who's Rabbeinu? It's the house of our teacher. That is Rav. At that time, the main teacher, he was the head of Torah Judaism, say, of the Jewish people in Bavel. The Nasi, the head of the Jewish people in Bavel, was Rav. So we have an argument over here between Rabbi Yitzchak and Rabbi Elazar. What the Migdash Ma'at is if it's the all shuls in the diaspora, in this case Bavel, or it's referring dafka to the base medrash of Rav. So the Rebbe right away makes an interesting observation, an interesting insight. The Rebbe says there's generally a rule that we try to lessen machlokes. Whenever you find a machlokes, an argument, if you can explain that it's not an argument and both agree, then that's a principle in Gemara learning. We always try to do that, to lessen machlokes, which is always a good thing to have less machlokes, right? So different opinions, we can explain that it's not different opinions, but one is emphasizing one thing and the other is emphasizing the other thing, and they're not arguing. So Rabbi Elazar and Rabbi Yitzchak are not arguing. How can it be that it's not an argument? Even according to Rabbi Elazar, all Batei Knesiyos and Batei Midrashos are a Beis Hamikdash. When we say Rabbeinu, why is it called Rabbeinu? The Rebbe says because Rabbeinu is a place where he's teaching Torah. It means it's not private residence of Rav, but rather it's not the private residence of Rav, but rather the place where he is teaching Torah. Now, since it's the Beis Hamikdash, it's his Beis Hamidrash, the place where he's teaching Torah. So it's also a Beis HaKnesses. It's also his shul, because the Gemara says Kivon shahalimud v'hatzvila tzrichem lios bebayis echad. Because learning and davening is supposed to be in one place. That we've learned, the Gemara says that the Gemara says it over there, and the Gemara says in Masechtas Brachos, that once the Chazal, the Chachamim understood that the ikr place where a person's prayers are received, are accepted, a person's tefillos are niskabel, in the place where he learns Torah. So then they would make. So what is it says, Oyev Hashem Sharei Tzion Mikol Mishkenos Yaakov. The Eibishter loves the gates of Tzion from all the dwellings of Yaakov. And the Gemara says, what does it mean, Oyev Hashem Sharei Tzion? That the Eibishter loves, the word Sharei Tzion shouldn't mean, Tzion usually means Yerushalayim. The Eibishter loves the gates of Yerushalayim from the other dwelling. Here the Gemara darshans the word Tzion. Tzion means a mark, a sign, a symbol. The Eibishter loves the gates of Tzion, mark. What does that mean? The Gemara darshans it to mean Shiyarim HaMetziyonim B'Halacha, means a place that is marked as a place where halacha is taught. From all teachings, it's a place where dafka halacha is taught. From the day the Beis Hamikdash was destroyed, the Eibishter doesn't have a place in this world. Only 4 amas of halacha, that's the place the Eibishter has in the world. That means that what does Hashem love? Hashem likes, meaning to say like this, there's a lot of different, a person can learn Torah. In Torah, there's a lot of elements of Torah that one can learn. But then there is a place where halacha is studied. Not only is halacha studied, but halacha is decided in that place. Like in the Beis Hamikdash, the Rebbe brings in the Ha'ara was the Lishkas HaGozis. That's where the Sanhedrin sat. And that's where there was like the Supreme Court of the Jewish people. And they decided halacha. And where was it? Right next to where the Eibishter dwelled. Hashem dwells in the Beis Hamikdash. So too it says over there that when the Beis Hamikdash was destroyed, where does the Eibishter make his main dwelling? In a place where there is Dalet Amay Shel Halach. Now, in the time of Bavel, when Rabbi Yitzchak and Rabbi Elazar were having this discussion, the main halachic yeshiva, where halacha was decided for all the Jewish people, was Rav's yeshiva. That was the main halacha center for the world, because Rav was the leader of Torah in his generation, and that's where halacha was decided. Since that's where from all the Mishkanos Yaakov, there are other Mishkanos. There's other places where Hashem dwells, like we said before. Every shul where people daven, every yeshiva where people learn Torah, the Eibishter, there is a Migdash. But the main Migdash, the main Beis HaMikdash, is Rav's yeshiva, because that's where halacha is decided for the main halacha center for the generation. Like he explains over here, the Bizman Beis HaMikdash Kayam Hoyasham Lishkas HaGozis. At the time when the Beis HaMikdash was standing, there was a special lishka, a special room, which was called Lishkas HaGozis, the place of hewn stones, because it was made up of special stones. Shemesham Yatzis Halacha Psuka al Pi Sanhedrin. The Sanhedrin in the Lishkas HaGozis from there, the Imam Vadei HaShechina Shruya, and with them the Shechina definitely dwelled. This is the Rebbe is quoting from the Marsha, where amongst them the Shechina definitely dwelled amongst the Sanhedrin. The Achshav Shacharav Beis Hamikdash, and now that the Beis Hamikdash was destroyed, Oisan Dalet Amos Shel Halacha, those Dalet Amos of Halacha, which is, what does that mean? What does it mean, Dalet Amos? Dalet Amos means, what does it mean, 4 cubits? 4 cubits is it's about 6 feet by 6 feet. What's the emphasis on that? It means, doesn't mean Dalet Amos, it means the set place, which it's set for a place where people come and learn halacha and decide halacha. So that's Makom Kavua Shememenu Yotzis Hayra LaAnshei Ha'ir. That's a set place where teachings go out to the people of the city. That's the inyan of Beis Rabbeinu, and that's the main makom of the Beis Hamikdash. When we say there's going to be a Beis Hamikdash with the Jewish people, it's referring to Beis Rabbeinu Shebabah. Okay, that is Sif Aleph. Umitzad, I'm sorry, one more paragraph. Umitzad ha'ilui ha'miyuchad the Beis HaKnesses, the Beis HaMedrash, the Beis Rabbeinu legab shar bate knesses, bate medrash shebabah. And since this Beis HaKnesses and Beis HaMedrash, which is Rav's Beis HaMedrash, which is the main Dalet Amos Shel Halacha that's in the world, which because of that it supersedes all the other shuls. Harehu HaMikdash Ma'at. This is the Beis HaMikdash Ma'at ha'ikri,
This is the main Beis Hamikdash. Shenoisen HaKadosh Baruch Hu Yisrael b'zman ha'os Tmuras HaMikdash HaGadol sheB'Yerushalayim. That this is the main Beis Hamikdash that Hashem gives the Jewish people during the time of Golus, that substitutes, at least to whatever it can substitute, the big Beis Hamikdash in Yerushalayim. Okay, so what do we have to summarize Sif Aleph? We have a Gemara that tells us that even though the Beis Hamikdash was destroyed, we have a little Beis Hamikdash. There's two opinions in the Gemara, whether that's all shuls or whether that's one specific shul, which is the shul Rav. The Gemara goes at, and Rebbe comes, and the Rebbe says that it's not an argument, both are true. There is a certain element of Beis Hamikdash to every shul, but there is the main one in where Rav taught Torah, Rav's Beis Hamikdash. That's what we learned in Sif Aleph. Now we continue on to Perek Beis. I'm not going to read it inside. I'm going to give you a summary of Sif Beis and of Sif Gimel, and I'm going to continue inside the Be'ezus Hashem when we get to Sif Dalet. So the Rebbe says we can bring a proof that there is differences in levels of the Beis Hamikdash. That there is different. Oh, this is a big chiddush of the Rebbe. The Rebbe is saying that there is that there is regular Beis Hamikdash, small Beis Hamikdash, mini Beis Hamikdash in every shul. And then there is a very powerful Beis Hamikdash, which is the Beis Hamikdash in the yeshiva of Rav, the Beis HaKnesses, both. It was the shul and the yeshiva of Rav. So the Rebbe is bringing a proof to this idea that there's different levels. And he says like this, the Gemara over there in the beginning, before the Gemara starts to talk about this idea of Beis Hamikdash, the Gemara talks about another idea which is very closely related. And that is that when Yidden went to Golus, the Shechina goes along with it. The Gemara says, Chavivin Yisrael, it's actually a mimra, it's a teaching of Reb Shimon ben Yochai, that Chavivin Yisrael, the Jewish people, are so precious that wherever they go, the Shechina goes along with them. When we went to Bavel, the Shechina was with them. When we were in Mitzrayim, it says the Shechina was with us. We went to Bavel, the Shechina was with us. We went to Elam. Elam is Shushan. That means in the end of Golus Bavel, Jews went into Paras. And they settled over there. The Shechina was with them over there. And then Golul Edom, when we go to Edom, which is a current exile, which is coming to an end already, Shechina Imam, the Shechina is with us. Okay, always with the Jewish people. Now, the Gemara says, where is the Shechina? The Gemara says that the Shechina is always with the Jewish people. Where is the Shechina? Again, earlier we were discussing that there is a place called Beis Hamikdash. That instead of the Beis Hamikdash, we have the Beis Hamikdash with us. Now we have what's the great thing about the Beis Hamikdash is that the Eibishter dwells there, the Shechina dwells there. So now it says, earlier the Gemara says that the Shechina comes along with the Jewish people. Then the Gemara says, so where is the Shechina during the time of Golus? Where is the Shechina? So the Gemara says, Bebavel Heicha. Where is he in Bavel? Amar Abaya. So it's amazing. Abaya comes along, and Abaya says, he gives two locations where the Shechina is in Bavel. One is called Beit Knishta de Hutzal. One is the Shul of Hutzal, and he brings on the bottom that Hutzal was a town or a village that was next to a large city called Neharda. Neharda was where we said earlier where Rav lived. Rav lived in Neharda. So Neharda was a big city with a lot of Jews living in Neharda. There were two main cities in Bavel where it was like the two main Torah centers. One was called Pumbedisa, and the other one was Neharda. So next to Neharda was another town called Hutzal. In that town of Hutzal, Ezra HaSofer made a shul. Ezra HaSofer made it. The Gemara is talking much later. Ezra HaSofer lived during the time of Golus Bavel, right? And he was the one who brought the Jewish people back to Eretz Yisrael. But now the Gemara is talking already in the later Golus Edom, but again, Jewish people found themselves in the same area of Bavel, even in the second Golus and Golus Edom. So the Gemara says, so Rashi brings that this Beis HaKnesses of Hutzal is close to the Beis HaMedrash of Ezra. It's interesting. He doesn't say it is the Shul of Ezra. It was the shul that was close to. Maybe the shul of Ezra was not really operational during the time when Abaya was speaking. But there was another shul that was close by, and that was a known shul. It was called Beis HaKnesses of Hutzal, and that was again not far from the city of Neharda, close to that. Fine. So that's one shul. The second shul where Abaya points, where the Shechina is to be found, is another shul. The shul is called Shaf v'Yosef. Interesting name of a shul. Shaf, Shin Pei, and Yosef. And that's, if you want to know where the Shechina is, either in the Beis HaKnesses of Hutzal and in the Beis HaKnesses of Shaf v'Yosef. And then Abaya continues. You shouldn't say that in both. The Shechina is in both shuls. But rather he's either here or here. He's not in both. He's either in one or he's in the other one. The Shechina dwell, or Shechina is feminine, so she's either in one or she's in the other one. Okay. Now first let me stop for a moment and say, what is the shul Shaf v'Yosef? The shul Shaf v'Yosef was not in Hutzal. That was in the neighboring city that I mentioned before, Nahar Dor. What kind of shul was it? This was an ancient shul. This shul was already going back to the beginning of Galus Bavel. Who built this shul? This shul was built by Yechoniah, the king Yechoniah, when he was driven out of Eretz Yisrael, when he was taken into captivity by Nebuchadnezzar. He came to Bavel, and him and the son and the people that were with him, that went to Galus with him, like Mordechai went to Galus with him, and because Nebuchadnezzar first came to Eretz Yisrael and drove out the leaders, the royal family, and so on and so on. And later he came back and he destroyed the rest of the Beis Hamikdash and everyone. When Yechoniah left, in the time that he was taken out, he went and he built a shul in Nahar Dor. That shul was called Shaf v'Yosef. What was so special about that shul, other than the fact that Yechoniah built it, is that Rashi brings, Rashi says that he built it with stones and earth that the Jewish people brought along with them from Eretz Yisrael to the exile. Why? Because there's a pasuk that says how much the Jewish people love the stones and earth of Eretz Yisrael. So because we couldn't part from it, we were being uprooted. We were being we were being uprooted from Eretz Yisrael and moved elsewhere. But we had such a love for the land that Yechoniah came and picked up the stones and the dirt from the Ofar, from where they left, from Eretz Yisrael, and brought it to Bavel, and they built this shul with Eretz Yisrael the stones. That's Rashi. That's what Rashi says in Megillah. But there's another Rashi where Rashi adds. Rashi says regarding this shul. This is a Rashi in Masechtas Rosh Hashanah, and over there Rashi says that the Shechina was always in this shul, and Rashi adds that it wasn't brought from stones of Eretz Yisrael, but it was brought from stones of Yerushalayim. Stones from Jerusalem, okay, Jerusalem stone. We all know how special Yerushalayim stone is, right? But even just physically in the appearance, it's beautiful Yerushalayim, stones that it's made. But also primarily the Kedusha of it. So they took stones from Yerushalayim. Then the Rebbe brings in the Ha'areh even more. Not only was it stones from Yerushalayim, but he brings from the Aruch, which is another Pirush on the Gemara, from the Rishonim. And the Aruch says that they actually brought the stones from the Beis Hamikdash. Okay, again, from Rashi Bayos it says stones from Eretz Yisrael. The Rashi in Masechtas Rosh Hashanah says stones from Jerusalem, from Yerushalayim. And the third one is that it's stones mamish from the Beis Hamikdash. Now in Aruch it says, why did they call it Shaf v'Yosef? What's the meaning? So the Aruch explains the reason it's called Shaf v'Yosef, because by taking stones from the Beis Hamikdash and bringing it and building a shul with those stones, it's as if the Beis Hamikdash itself traveled from Yerushalayim and was relocated in Bavel. Shaf means traveling. Yosef means settled in Aramaic. Shaf is the same meaning of nasa, of traveling. So the reason they called it, which shul are you davening going today? You're going Shabbos. Which shul? I'm going to Shaf Yosef. What does it mean, Shaf Yosef? Shaf Yosef means the traveled Beis Hamikdash, because they actually took stones from the Beis Hamikdash. They made it travel, and they brought. Obviously, if they took the stones and they made the Beis Hamikdash travel, it also means that the kedusha of the Beis Hamikdash travel, and therefore this is one of these main shuls where again, Abaye says, where does the Shechina rest? Where is the Shechina? He points to two places: shul in Hutzal and the shul in Shaf Yosef of Nahar Dor. But then Abaye makes a very important statement, which the Rebbe makes a very big deal of. that don't say it's both places. The Shekhinah is in both places. The Shekhinah is in one of them, either in Shafi Yosef or in the Hutzal place. Okay, so now the Rebbe is going to explain and derive from this Gemara that there are different levels of Beis HaMikdash. Why? Because what does it mean? Let's analyze first when it says a place where the Shekhinah is. The Shekhinah is everywhere. We know the Shekhinah, there is no place. There's no place where there's no Shekhinah. There's no Shekhinah, then the place can't exist. So I'm here sitting in Los Angeles. The Shekhinah is right over here because it also couldn't exist. You in New York, any place can't be without the Shekhinah being there. So what does it mean the Shekhinah is somewhere? When we say Shekhinah is somewhere, the Maharsha explains it means somewhere similar to the Beis HaMikdash, that the Shekhinah is revealed. It doesn't mean just that Shekhinah is there. It means Makom Gilui Shekhinah, a place where the Shekhinah is revealed. So just like in the Beis HaMikdash, we had a place. So that's what Rav Shimon Bar Yochai is saying. The Jewish people are so precious that when we were in Eretz Yisrael, the Shekhinah revealed herself to us where Hashem was revealed to us where in Yerushalayim, in the Beis HaMikdash. When we go to Golus, the Eibishter can't part from us. And not only that he will be there, but hidden, Hashem comes in a revealed way with us. And what's that makom of Gilui Shekhinah? So then Abaya says, where is that? The Gemara asks, where is the Shekhinah revealed? Says, you should know that there are two particular shuls where the Shekhinah is revealed. But Abaya emphasized it's only one, not the other. What does that mean, only one, not the other? Because just like in the Beis HaMikdash, there is one singular place that's a Beis HaMikdash. There's no two Batei Mikdash. We only have one Beis HaMikdash. So too, when it comes to why? Because the Shekhinah dwells in one nest, in one place that's her home. The Eibishter is Boicher HaMakom, a place that's my home. The same is also when we say that during the Zman HaGolus, the Shekhinah comes along, there is one place. Oh, but since it's Golus, it's not Yerushalayim. So it's not a set place in which we say that there is only one place and nowhere else, in the same way like Yerushalayim is designated as that's the place and it can't be changed forever. It moves around. So the Shekhinah is also only in one place. But sometimes in the shul of Hutzal, and at times in the shul of Shaf the Nosif. Okay, that's the meaning of Makom Gilui Shekhinah. So the Rebbe says, right now, the Rebbe wants to apply the same idea from the place that Shekhinah is to the other side of the coin. What's the other side of the coin? The other side of the same coin is the place that receives the Shekhinah. Because the Gemara speaks first about the Shekhinah, and then the Gemara speaks about the Beis HaMikdash. Now, obviously, these two go together, because the Keli, let's call it Keli and Oyer. The Oyer is the Shekhinah, the Keli is the Beis HaMikdash. So just like we say that what? That in Shekhinah, in the Oyer, there is one main place where the Shekhinah dwells. Yes, at times it was Hutzal, at times it was Shafi Nehardoi, Shafi Yosef, two different shuls. But it's one place where the Shekhinah is revealed. Same is also the Makom that receives it, which is the Beis HaMikdash, the Mikdash Ma'at, is also primarily one place, which is, and on that, what's that one place? So either it was in one of those two shuls, but Rebbe Lazar is saying you should know what is the Beis HaMikdash. And now in our days, when Rebbe Lazar was alive, that was where Beis Rabbeinu Sheba Babel, that was Rav's shul where they were teaching Torah. That's the primary Mikdash. That's the root of all others. In other words, what does the Rebbe say? That really there is Hashras HaShekhinah in every shul. Wherever the Jewish people are, as whenever this we can see later in the Sikha, wherever there's 10 Jews, there's Hashras HaShekhinah. But yet there is one main place for Gilui Shekhinah. So there is also one main place, which is the Mikdash, which is the place which is a very important idea, because the question is, when the Eibishter goes to Golus, Jews go to exile, and the Eibishter goes to Golus along with us. So when the Shekhinah comes with Golus, is Hashem always walking with his suitcase, or there is a certain kind of Isyashvus, a certain kind of place that becomes a Makom Kavua? Because you technically can say that since it's exile, the Eibishter doesn't find a nest. So he's like a bird without a nest, wandering. But it's not that way. The Shekhinah always needs to be, the Lashon Shekhinah has to be Sheikhe, has to dwell somewhere. That's why when it says the Shekhinah is revealed somewhere, it says the pasuk that is brought for that. The Rebbe brings the pasuk from in Ara 17. The Rebbe brings the pasuk. V'samti kisi, I put my throne be'elam. The Eibishter didn't just come without a throne. When God comes, when Hashem comes, when the Shekhinah comes, He brings along the throne, the kisei, like a kisei Yaakov. That means that there is now a designated place. So what's that designated place? That's the Migdash Ma'at that becomes the designated place. So even though, as we're soon going to see, from that Migdash Ma'at, radiance goes out and shines to all shuls everywhere, but it still has one primary place, just like there's one prime. Why? Because there's one primary place for Gilui Shechina, there's one primary place for receiving that Gilui Shechina. That's the seat, that's the kisei, and that's the Migdash Ma'at, and that's the Beis Rabbeinu Sheba'al. That is Sif Beis. In Sif Gimel, the Rebbe comes, and the Rebbe says another Gavaldige, adds an amazing idea. What does he say? He says, so now that we've established that what? That there is a Migdash Ma'at, and all shuls are a Migdash Ma'at. Then there is a primary Migdash Ma'at. So he says, this concept of having a Beis HaMikdash is not something that only relates to the time of exile. The time of Golus, the Eibishter has to be together with the Jewish people. Hashem loves us so much, He wants to be with us during the time of Golus. The Rebbe says the concept of Beis HaMikdash is also noigeya to the Zman HaGeula. Again, this Sikha, the Rebbe is be'ikr koching sich, not so much in the Hashros HaShechina of the Jewish people during the time of Golus, but what the ikr inyan that the Rebbe is koching sich, that the Rebbe is bringing out in this Sikha, is benegeya to the Geula, the redemption, the end of Golus, the transitioning from Golus to Geula. So the Rebbe said, it would be possible to say that the Makom Hashros HaShechina, the Migdash Ma'at, since it's Migdash, let's look at the words, Migdash Ma'at. Since we're saying it's Migdash Ma'at, means it's the mini base. It's not the real deal. It's mini. Since it's mini, it's a very temporary thing. Since we need to have a Beis HaMikdash, Hashem doesn't want to go away from us, even during the time of Golus. So Hashem is with us in Golus. So He needs a nest. So we have all shuls. We have primarily one shul, which serves as the primary nest. But we would think that the time of the Geula comes, then the whole significance of these Batei Mikdash, of these places, becomes completely irrelevant. It's not significant anymore, because now we're going back to the Beis HaMikdash in Yerushalayim, to the grand big Beis HaMikdash. And if we go back to the grand big Beis HaMikdash, it becomes completely irrelevant, these Batei Midrash, including the main Batei Mikdash, Beis HaMikdash during the time of Golus, the Beis Rabbeinu, which is the main Beis HaMikdash, the Migdash Ma'at. So the Rebbe says, no. That even at the time of the Geula, and not just even, but primarily at the time of Geula, is where the significance of these Batei Mikdash is going to shine forth. Why? Because even though the Eibishter is going to disconnect the Hashras HaShechina that happened in the diaspora, where all the Jewish people are during the time of Golus, is a temporary thing. It's not meant to be there forever. I mean, of course, we know that the reason we go to Golus, and the Rebbe talks about that later, is that we should make the whole world Eretz Yisrael, and that the Shekhinah should dwell everywhere and be revealed everywhere. That's true. But we're talking about the primary intense revelation of Hashem. That's going to be in Eretz Yisrael. Comes out that its primary residence during the time of Golus is a temporary thing. And after that, the Shekhinah is going to leave the Golus, and he's going to go back to Eretz Yisrael. And therefore, the Batei Migdashos, the places that were once holy, are not going to, the place itself is not going to maintain that level of holiness, not the buildings, the actual geographic location where the building stood, the street where the building stood, and they are not going to maintain that idea that it's the Makom Hashras Hashchina. That's not going to be there anymore. It's going to stop. The only place that's permanent, forever holy is Yerushalayim. All other places, the holiness of Hashras Hashchina is not forever. However, that's only regarding the place itself, not regarding the actual structure, the buildings. The buildings are forever going to be holy. Why? Because the buildings are going to connect to the Beis Hamikdash, are all going to be transported from the Chutz La'aretz, and they're going to come to Eretz Yisrael. Because on that the Rebbe brings that in that very same page in the Gemara, in Masechtas Megillah, the Gemara continues, and the Gemara says like this: Asidin bate knesiyos bate medrasha shebebavel, that the Beis HaKnesses and bate medrashas, again, the shuls and the yeshivas of Bavel, sheyikavu be'eretz Yisrael. That's what the Gemara says. The Gemara says that all shuls are going to come to Eretz Yisrael. Okay, that's a quote from the beginning of Sif Gimel. You can see it. The Rebbe brings a quote from the Gemara. I quoted one passage, but I'm not going to read the whole Sif Gimel inside. I did quote one passage from it. So why is the Gemara now discussing that the Batei Migdash are going to transport it? Now we're in Eretz Yisrael. When we say that all shuls are going to transport to Eretz Yisrael, we're in Eretz Yisrael. So the Rebbe brings from the Maharsha, fascinating idea, that there is another medrash. The Maharsha says that there is another medrash. The medrash says that when Mashiach comes, all holiness is going to expand. The Beis Hamikdash of the future is going to become as large as Yerushalayim. Yerushalayim is going to expand to the size of Eretz Yisrael. And Eretz Yisrael is going to expand to the rest of the world, to engulf the entire world. That's what it says. So the Maharsha explains it in the context of what the Gemara says over here. That Maharsha explaining why is the Beis Hamikdash suddenly going to be so large? It's going to cover the entire Yerushalayim. If you look in Yecheskel and you look at the actual description about the third Beis Hamikdash, you don't have such a big building that it should be the size of Jerusalem. We know the size of the third Beis Hamikdash. It doesn't describe such a big building. So the Maharsha explains it's not the Beis Hamikdash itself. It's all the attachments that are going to be attached to it. What's going to become attached to it? So the Maharsha says all the small Beis Hamikdashes, which, as we said before, what are the small Beis Hamikdashes during the time of Golus? And it's a serious Beis Hamikdash. It's not just a joke. A Beis Hamikdash means that why? Because the Shekhinah is literally dwelling in all these batei, in every yeshiva and in every shul across the entire Golus. Imagine the Jews everywhere, and we made shtiblach and shuls and big shuls and small shuls and yeshivas and schools. Yeah, yeshivas include where Beis Rivka as well, where boys study Torah and girls study Torah. All these places are now Beis Hamikdash because the Eibishter dwells in them. Small Beis Hamikdash. What's going to happen to them when Mashiach comes? The Shekhinah goes back to the large Beis Hamikdash. All small Beis Hamikdashes are going to become swept up and attached to this third Beis Hamikdash. And the Maharsha goes ahead and says an amazing thing. That's why he says you should realize that when you go to shul, it can be on anywhere. It can be, a shul on Crown Street. It could be a shul on Kingston Avenue. It could be over here in Los Angeles on La Brea Boulevard. It can be a shul. So you're walking into a shul, and it's holy. It's holy. The Maharsha says you should know. Since this shul is going to attach itself one day to the Beis Hamikdash, I forgot to conclude. That's why the Beis Hamikdash is going to be the size of Jerusalem. Because imagine having all the shuls of the entire world attached to the Beis Hamikdash. Now I'm going to stop for a second. It's hard for us to imagine that. What is it going to look like? So we're going to have to say that somehow in the Eibishter's infinite wisdom, it's going to attach itself in a way that's going to be magnificently beautiful. It's not going to be chas v'shar. You think to yourself, take every shul, how that's going to look. No, obviously, it's going to be done in a way that only the Eibishter. It's going to be the prettiest, the most exquisite building ever. But they're all going to become attached to it. So it comes out that even before it's attached to Marshall, while this building is still on Kingston Avenue, while it's still wherever in a shul in Borough Park, a shul in Williamsburg, a shul in Lakewood, a shul in Muncie, a shul in Poland, a shul in France, wherever, while they're there, their actual place is going to be the space of the third Beis Hamikdash. Because that means even while they're still in Paris, this space is one day in the future going to be part of the Beis Hamikdash. All shuls are going to become part of the Beis Hamikdash. And the Maharsha says, with that we'll understand an amazing pasuk. The pasuk says, I'm going to bring the Jewish people to my holy mountain, the Simachtem, the Beis Tfilasi, and I'm going to make them happy I'm going to cause them joy with my house of prayer, which is going to be the Beis Hamikdash. And he says over there, Ki Beisi Beis Tefillah, my house is going to be a house of prayer. Yikare, it's going to be called L'chol Ha'amim, to all the nations. So the Maharsha says the simple meaning of this pasuk we know means that that when Mashiach will come, the Beis Hamikdash is going to be a house of worship, a house of prayer, not just for Jews. And the nations of the world are going to flock. Everybody's going to flock to pray in the Beis Hamikdash. People from all over the world. People are going to come to daven in the Beis Hamikdash because everybody's that's the house of prayer for all nations. But the Maharsha has a gewaldige explanation based on what we just said. He says when the nations are going to come and people are going to come and look at the Beis Hamikdash, they're going to say Yikare. They're going to say, hey, the Beis Hamikdash has a piece of France on it. The Beis Hamikdash has a piece of Australia, a piece of Melbourne, a piece of San Francisco, and if the Rebbe set up Chabad houses all over the world, literally every nation, shul, because every nation, Morocco is going to say, there is my part of the Beis Hamikdash, because these are buildings that were once in Morocco, and now it's part of the Beis Hamikdash. That's Ki Beisi Beis Tefillah Yikare. It's going to be called L'chol Ha'amim. From the lands of all the nations are going to be part of that Beis Hamikdash. So what do we see from the Maharsha so far? So again, what the Rebbe is building from the Maharsha is that the Migdash Ma'atz are not just a temporary dwelling place for Hashem during the time of Golus, and after Golus is over, they can be discarded. You can feel like you use a paper cup. You drink it, and after a while you throw it in the garbage. So it wasn't necessary. It had based on all these shuls had a usage. But now we're going to Yerushalayim. So we say no. Bisman, when the Geula comes, these Batei Mikdash will remain and they will become part of the third Beis Hamikdash. So now the Rebbe says in the end of Siv Gimel, the Rebbe says an amazing chiddush. Since we've established earlier in the Sikha that amongst the Batei Mikdash where the Shechina dwells, and amongst the Mikdash Ma'at, that we have different levels, and the primary Mikdash Ma'at, the main Mikdash Ma'at, is the Beis Rabbeinu Shebebavel. Which we explained earlier is the house of Rav, but doesn't only mean the house of Rav. It means in that time, whichever generation, the main house, there's always one place, which is the Beis Rabbeinu, which soon the Sikha, the Rebbe is going to address that, which is the main house from where teachings come to the Jewish world. That becomes the main Beis Rabbeinu. So, that becomes the main Beis Hamikdash. So we see there's different levels. There is the primary Beis Hamikdash and there's little Beis Hamikdash. So the Rebbe says, Yeshloimar, we can say that when all shuls will connect to the Beis Hamikdash Hashlishi, they won't all connect equally. The primary Mikdash Ma'atz that were more Mikdash during the time of Golus are going to be closer and directly connected to the third Beis Hamikdash. In other words, if you're connecting, there's going to be things that are going to be connected in the inner connection, and then there are going to be those that are added on the side, more and more. Which Batei Mikdash are going to be the first ones connecting Mamish to the Beis Hamikdash? The Rebbe says, just like in Lishkas Hagozis, just like in the Beis Hamikdash, we had the Sanhedrin, where from there Torah comes to the entire Jewish people. They were mamish in the Azara, mamish connected inside the Beis Hamikdash. So to all these Lishkas Hagozis, what are all these Lishkas Hagozis? It's all the Beis Rabbeinu Shebebavels, throughout all the generations. And the Rebbe is going to say 770 in our generation. But let's say the Baal Shem Tov Shul in the days of the Baal Shem Tov. And the Arizal Shul in the days of the Arizal. And all the other primary shuls throughout all that were called the Beis Rabbeinu Shebebavels throughout all the generations, they're going to be the first and primary in connecting to the Beis Hamikdash. And then through them and with them is going to attach all the other smaller Beis Hamikdashes, Migdash Ma'atz. They're all going to attach to the Beis Hamikdash laws. In other words, the difference between Beis Rabbeinu and all other shuls is not only in the time of Golus, but also in the time when the Beis Hamikdash will be fully built in Yerushalayim. We will still see the difference between a primary Migdash Ma'at and a secondary Migdash Ma'at. That the primary Migdash Ma'at will have a higher level of attachment. That's Siv Gimel. Now I would ask the host or the hostess to put Siv Dalet onto the screen, and now we're going to learn Siv Dalet inside, Perek Dalet inside. The Yeseda is a Yeshleim. Here the Rebbe is going to add a bomb, mamash, an amazing chiddush. What's Yeshleim? Not only will the shuls all attached to the third Beis Hamikdash with a primary space and a primary place for the main Beis Hamikdash, for Beis Rabbeinu Shebebavos, but the Rebbe actually says an interesting thing. It's not like there is going to be a third Beis Hamikdash in Yerushalayim, and then later Mashiach will blow his whistle, and all the shuls will come flying, and they'll all attach themselves, including Beis Rabbeinu Shebebavos, which will also attach. It's not going to be like that. Again, what the Rebbe says over here are Devarim Nifloim. They're wondrous chidushim. The Rebbe says, but the Rebbe proves it all in a very, very methodical way. He says, V'yashloima, we can say, Shahamikdash Tela'asid, the future Beis Hamikdash, Shabanu U'mushuchlal Yigala V'yavim and Hashemayim. So the Rebbe says, first of all, you should know the third Beis Hamikdash is going to come down completely done from heaven. But we're all accustomed to think that where is that going to happen? That ground zero for that to happen, the amazing sight where all Jewish people are going to lift their eyes and they're going to see a third Beis Hamikdash coming down from heaven, and it's going to land where? On top of the Har HaBayis, on top of the Temple Mount. I saw one of the memes that they put out for Tisha B'Av. Was beautiful. I'm sure everybody saw it. It was going around all over. They had a meme which shows the mosque, the Temple Mount with the mosque, and suddenly you see that it switches and it becomes a Beis Hamikdash. But that's where it's going to happen. The Rebbe says no. The Beis Hamikdash is going to actually first come down and reveal itself in the primary Mikdash Ma'at, in the location and in the building actually of the Mikdash Ma'at of the time of Golus. From there, it's going to lift up and go to Yerushalayim. Its first landing, its landing post. When they send the shuttle out of space, it lands over there in Florida. If Florida has bad weather, they sometimes land the shuttles over here in California. The question is, what's the landing post of the Beis Hamikdash Hashlishi? Is it in Jerusalem? The Rebbe puts the mark and he says, no, it's in Beis Rabbeinu Shebebavos. Why? Since the big Beis Hamikdash, we said before, traveled and resettled and relocates where? Into a primary residence during Golus, which is the main Beis Hamikdash. Bisman Golus, which is what? Beis Rabbeinu Shebebavos. And from there, it's going to be lifted up and go to Yerushalayim. And the Rebbe explains why. Why should we say that the Pashtus, no one ever thought so? Everybody was always ready. The third Beis Hamikdash is going to land in Jerusalem. If it's coming down from heaven, it's coming down on the Har Habayis in Yerushalayim. What's the mice over here? It's going to come down and it's going to first take a hold in the primary Mikdash during the time of Golus. So the Rebbe says, because we need to understand one Inyan. What's the Beis Hamikdash? The Beis Hamikdash is the place where the Shechina rests. So follow now along the reasoning. I'm going to explain it outside before I read it inside. So the Rebbe says that the Beis Hamikdash is the place, as we said before, there's a keli for the oil. The oil is the Shechina. Now, there is two types of Gilui Shechina. There is Gilui Shechina in the Beis Hamikdash, in Yerushalayim. And then there is Gilui Shechina, as we said before, during the time of Golus. In the small Beis Hamikdash, there's Gilui Shechina. Obviously, everybody understands that even though we said there was Gilui Shechina during the time of Golus, the Gilui Shechina during the time of Golus is far, 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 far less than the Gilui Shechina that happened in the Beis Hamikdash. In the Beis Hamikdash, there was a grandiose Gilui Shechina. And during the time of Golus, it's very, very concealed Gilui Shechina. There is Gilui, but very, very minuscule compared to the Gilui. That's called Golus HaShechina. The Shechina is not, in a sense, so to speak, revealing her beauty, her glory, her power, her magnificence, her strength. It's all severely, severely hidden, compromised. Now, it's not that there's no revelation, because then there won't be any Gilui Shechina. We said before that even in the time of Golus, there is Shechina Imayim, which we explained earlier, means Gilui Shechina. But it's called a Golus Gilui, not a Geula Gilui. There is a Geula Gilui, a Geula revelation, and a Golus Gilui. Now, okay, so that's number one. We have to differentiate. There's two Gilui Shechina. Gilui Shechina of the time of Geula, and Gilui Shechina during the time of Golus. Now, corresponding to these two levels of Gilui Shechina, there's two levels of Beis Hamikdash. There is Beis Hamikdash HaGadol. That's when there is Gilui Shechina in a massive way. There is a big, massive Beis Hamikdash in Yerushalayim to receive it. And then there is Mikdash Ma'at, which is the facility, the nest for the Shechina Ma'at. When the Shechina is very minuscule and very, very limited in her revelation, her Mikdash is also a very modest, let's call it a modest Beis Hamikdash. There is a grandiose Beis Hamikdash and a modest Beis Hamikdash. That's the Mikdash Ma'at. All shuls, primarily one shul in every generation, one primary shul where the Shechina is the primary manifest. Okay. Now the question is, the moment when it's going to change from Golus to Geula, how is that going to happen? So we might think the Shechina is going to suddenly, before anybody can even blink an eye, the Shechina is going to disappear. She's going to run from her nest in Golus. She's going to flap her wings and soar and go to Eretz Yisrael and appear and reveal itself over there. If the Shechina reveals itself Hashem reveals himself in Yerushalayim, then we need a Beis Hamikdash in Yerushalayim. But the Rebbe explains over here, that's not what's going to happen. The Shechina is actually going to transition from her Golus mode to her Geula mode still in Chutz Li'aretz. In other words, the change of the Gilui Shechina from being a modest, a small Gilui, to a powerful revelation, God is going to reveal himself, so to speak, if I can translate this into simple English. That's the revelation that still happens in Golus. And from Golus, it's going to go to, from the place of Golus, that revelation is going to travel. We're going to walk the Shechina, so to speak, to Eretz Yisrael, to her complete manifestation. Now, for her complete resting place. Now, and we'll see in a moment, we're going to see how do we know that the Shechina is going to appear with all her glory in Golus. Maybe it's going to happen in Eretz Yisrael. But we'll see that in a moment from where we know that. But first, follow along the points. The Rebbe says, and he's going to prove it from Torah, that the Gilui, the transition of the Shekhinah being in a very limited manifestation to the Shekhinah being fully revealed with all of her glory is going to happen still in the geographic location of Golos, wherever the primary Hashras, the Shekhinah was during the time of Golos. That's where the change is going to happen. Now, the moment the Shekhinah reveals herself, the Shekhinah immediately needs a Beis Hamikdash in which to reveal itself. So that's why the Beis Hamikdash Hashlishi has to reveal itself. So therefore, the Mikdash Ma'at, the modest Beis Hamikdash, is not compatible. The modest Beis Hamikdash is compatible with a modest revelation of Shekhinah. A Geula revelation of Shekhinah requires a grandiose Beis Hamikdash. What's the grandiose Beis Hamikdash? The third Beis Hamikdash. So the third Beis Hamikdash has to reveal itself already in Golos, in the place of Golos, and then go to Yerushalayim, because the transition of Gilui Shechina from small to large to great happens in the time of Golos, in the place of Golos. How do we know that the Gilui of Shechina from being small to great happens in the place of Golos? Because the pasuk says that when the Gemara says, it belongs from the pasuk, that when the Golos ends, the Eibishter will not leave the Golos a minute before us. Hashem will go out of Golos together with the Jewish people. The actual leaving Golos, it's not like Hashem is going to go back and then Hashem is later going to do miracles when he's in Eretz Yisrael, when he's already in Yerushalayim, and he's going to bring us later. That's not what's going to happen. Hashem will not leave the Golos until the very last Jew leaves the Golos. It's like the captain of a ship doesn't leave the last one to abandon ship. God will not leave the Golos until every single Jew leaves the Golos. That means that now, to leave the Golos, it will require Hashem's revelation. That was to end the Golos and to bring the Geula requires Gilui Shechina, the revelation of Shechina. So that means that the Gilui, and since the Eibishter is not leaving until the very last Jew, what does that mean? That means that the Shechina reveals herself still in Makom HaGolos. If the Eibishter reveals itself in Makom HaGolos, then the Beis Hamikdash has to reveal itself over there, b'Makom where the Shechina is, because the grand Shechina needs a grand Beis Hamikdash. So therefore, the Rebbe proves that the Beis Hamikdash Hashlishi is going to first reveal itself in the Migdash. And where is the Shechina? In the Migdash Ma'at. That means that the Migdash Ma'at is not going to stay Migdash Ma'at. It's going to become big Beis Hamikdash. It's going to attach itself within it and connected to it. It's going to reveal itself the third Beis Hamikdash, and from there it's going to go to Eretz Yisrael. Now, to prove this idea, the Rebbe brings a similar concept with the Sanhedrin, but I'm going to share that with you in a little while. I want to read this inside. So the Hashros, I'm holding over here, second paragraph in Perek Dalet. Hashros v'gilui hashchina b'hamikdash ma'at ikri shebavel, the dwelling and the revelation of Shechina in the small Beis Hamikdash that's in Bavel. As we said earlier, that the Mikdash comes and dwells over there. Higam kishehem nigolim. In other words, at the time of the Geula itself, the Shechina is still in the Mikdash Ma'at. Why? Like it's explained in that very Gemara over there in the continuation of the Sugya, even when the Jewish people are redeemed, the Shechina is with them. Shenemar, as it says, that the Eibishter is going to return Eshavuscha, your returnees. So Chazal say v'heishiv lo nemar elo v'shav. Doesn't say v'heishiv, it says v'shav. Malamed sha'kadosh baruch hu shav imohem. This teaches you that the Eibishter shav imon, the Eibishter returns with the Jewish people. Kamoi im eshavuscha, kamoi im shavuscha, together with your captains. Mibein hagolos, from the golos. Koloimar. And here's the only the Rebbe was able to see this with such clear eyes. Gam berega ha'achron da hagolos, even in the last moment of exile, nimtzais hashchina Makom Shagol Yisrael. The Shechina is in the place where the Jewish people were in exile. Shenasa Migdash v'Yashav Sham. The Shechina is where? In that, the last second, the Shechina is where? In the house that's prepared for him during the time of Golus. Misham, and from there, Shava Kadosh Baruch Hu and Kol B'nai Yisrael. From there, the Shechina will return together with all the Jewish people, Laha Migdash, to the Beis HaMikdash, Ulegalis by Shechinasei La'olam Va'ed, to reveal His Shechina forever and ever. But the first revelation happens while we're still in Golus. And since the Eibishter will return with the Jewish people from the Golus, from the Mikdash Ma'at, from the Beis Rabbeinu Shebabavel, Shenasa Mikdash v'Yashav, which is the place where the Beis HaMikdash is there now, Nimtza, Shebamakom Zeh, that in this place, this is ground zero, Mischila v'Nasis Geulas HaShechina. The change from Golus HaShechina to Geulas HaShechina happens in that place. And what does that mean? His Galusa B'chol HaToykef HaShleimus, that the Shechina reveals herself with all her power and all her strengths. Loirak ba'ois in the Mikdash Ma'at, not with a minor, not in a manner of a minor revelation which can suffice with a minor Beis HaMikdash, but in a manner of a big Beis HaMikdash. Shazeh Inyan Mikdash HaAsid. The Mikdash HaAsid is the place and the vehicle through where the Shechina will reveal herself. So if the Shechina needs to do that while we're still in Golus and in the place of Golus, so the Beis HaMikdash has to be there, or else it can't happen. The Sagnin Achar, the Rebbe puts it in other words. Keshem sheshivas hashchina humar makam shenitzas begolus. In other words, the Rebbe puts it now in other words. Just like the Shechina returning to Eretz Yisrael is not that the Shechina goes back up to heaven and then she lands back in Eretz Yisrael, but rather the Shechina will go directly from the place she is in Golus. From there she will go to Yerushalayim, to the Beis HaMikdash. So too, just like the Shechina will go from Golus to her final resting place, so too the Beis HaMikdash as well. So too the Beis HaMikdash as well will travel from the Golus. Because again, remember, the Beis HaMikdash, which was what once in Yerushalayim, goes with the Jewish people into Golus. So when it comes time for it to end, so the Beis HaMikdash goes back from the place where it is in Golus to Yerushalayim. But when it goes back, it's not going back as a Mikdash Ma'at. It's going back as a massive completed Beis HaMikdash. Kach Shivas Mikdash HaAsid, the return of the future Beis HaMikdash, She'in Yonai Ashros, the Gilui HaShechina, which its inyan is the dwelling of the Shechina, who Mahamokim is from the place, Shenasa Mikdash v'Yashasham, from the place where the Beis HaMikdash was there, Bizman HaGolus at the time of Golus, Shesham Nizgal Tchila, over there the Beis HaMikdash will reveal itself first, and afterwards it will move to its place in Yerushalayim. So we have an unbelievable chiddush. In the last sif in Perek Beis, we learned that all the shuls will connect, that Mikdash Ma'at is not just during the time of Golus, also during the time of Geula. We also learned that the primary connection is going to happen in one Beis HaMikdash, which is the main Beis HaMikdash, which is the Beis Rabbeinu Shebabavel. Through that, all the Batei Mikdash will connect. And now the Rebbe is adding it, Sif Gimel, that not only will it be attached to the Beis HaMikdash, but the actual beginning of the third Beis HaMikdash, its first manifestation and its first revelation is going to happen in that Mikdash Ma'at, in its primary residence, and from there it's going to go back. Now, the Rebbe points out a similar concept where you see that the return happens, that we first restore something to its full glory in Golus, and then we bring it back to Eretz Yisrael. In other words, because one can say, okay, the Beis HaMikdash has to go back, but it's going to go back in its Golus form, and it's only going to become massive and big once it's back already. But the Rebbe, we proved before that why it cannot be that way. Because the Shechina has to reveal herself already during the time of Golus. In order for Shechina to reveal herself, she needs a Beis HaMikdash to reveal herself. That's one proof. But the Rebbe proves it from something else, very geschmack. We know that just like the Shechina left and the Beis Hamikdash left and joined the Jewish people, another very important institution left, and that was the Sanhedrin. The Sanhedrin used to be in the Beis Hamikdash, and then they went to 10 exiles, and finally the Sanhedrin dispersed, and there's no more Sanhedrin, even though there was always great rabbis that stand b'makom ha-Sanhedrin. But they never, where was the last place that the Sanhedrin were convened and there was still the Sanhedrin? So the Rambam says the last place where the Sanhedrin moved to before they were completely dismantled was the city of Tveria. That was the last place that they sat. After 9 journeys, they came to Tveria, and then finally, once Tveria was destroyed or whatever, they fell apart, the Sanhedrin, and we don't have any more the institution of the large Sanhedrin of 70, Zakanim, whatever. So the Rambam says, however, from the Gemara, that when the Sanhedrin is going to return, it's not where are they going to assemble? What's going to be their first place of assembly? You would think they're going to go back to Yerushalayim, and they're going to assemble for the first sitting, for their first assembly in the Beis HaMikdash, where the Sanhedrin belong. So the Rambam says no. The Rambam says because they were dismantled in Tveria, so they're going to reconvene in Tveria, and from Tveria, the big Sanhedrin is going to travel to Yerushalayim. So you see the same idea that it's for first restored to its glory in the Makom HaGolus, and then it goes back. So the Rebbe says the same thing regarding the Shechina. The Shechina is going to return to her glory, not in Eretz Yisrael, but in Golus. Number 2, the Beis HaMikdash is going to be restored to its glory, not another bomb inside. Maybe we can say very powerful words. We can say. Everybody knows that when Mashiach is to be identified as Mashiach, what is Mashiach's, what's it called again? Job description. Mashiach, the Rambam tells us what the job description of Mashiach is. He needs to restore the Malchus Beis David. He needs to he needs to first affect the Jewish people to keep Torah and mitzvahs and strengthen its breaches. After he does that, he gathers the Jewish people. No, he fights wars, and what else? He's matzliach in his wars and in getting the Jewish people to observance of Torah and mitzvahs. Then he builds a Beis Hamikdash in its place. The pashtus, that means builds a Beis Hamikdash where? In Yerushalayim, where it's supposed to be. And he gathers all the gathering Jewish people, then he fulfilled his job. If he managed to do all of that, then he's Mashiach Vadai. And he's definitely Mashiach, hands down Mashiach. There's no question. He's halachically established as absolute Mashiach. There's no question. The Rambam says that in earlier stages, if he's already a melech and he's getting the Jewish people to keep Torah and mitzvahs, and he's learning Torah himself, and he's spreading Torah and mitzvahs, and he's waging wars, then he achieves the status of Cheskas Mashiach. It's not Mashiach Vadai. Only after he's Matzliach. And part of his Atzlacha is that he has to do what? He has to build the Beis HaMikdash, he has to gather the Jewish people. So what does it mean to build the Beis HaMikdash? Build the Beis HaMikdash means to build the Beis HaMikdash. Where? In Yerushalayim. The Rebbe says, that's a little interesting. Why does the Rambam say? Why doesn't the Rambam say, they give the Beis HaMikdash be Yerushalayim? You should say that. Secondly, why does the Rambam have to tell you where else should Mashiach build the Beis HaMikdash? In Hong Kong? Where is Mashiach building the Beis HaMikdash? He's building the Beis HaMikdash. There's only one place. We know that already from all over. Rambam says that already a bunch of times, that from David HaMelech's days, the Eibishter chose one place, and there's only one place for Ashras Shechina, and that's the Beis HaMikdash. So why does the Rambam suddenly have to tell you over here, Secondly, if he does want to say Mekayim, let him tell you which place, for Yerushalayim. So the Rebbe says that the Rambam is hinting to the idea that we just discussed, that the way the third Beis Hamikdash is going to manifest is that the third Beis Hamikdash is coming down from heaven, but it's going to come down into a Beis Hamikdash that's built already. What kind of Beis Hamikdash? Which Beis Hamikdash? The temporary but primary Beis Hamikdash that was built by Mashiach during the time of Golus, which serves as the Migdash Ma'at during the last phase of Golus, when Mashiach is alive already. And not only is Mashiach alive, Mashiach is active. And he's doing already his work while he's the Cheskas Mashiach. And he's doing his work. During that time, Mashiach is as the Rebbe is going to explain later, he is the Beis Rabbeinu. He is the one he's the leader of the Jewish people. So his shul and his place where he's teaching is the primary Migdash. So that Beis Hamikdash is what he builds, not the Beis Hamikdash. And in that Beis Hamikdash will be revealed the third Beis Hamikdash. And that's what the Rambam is hinting to when he says B'Mekai Mai. The Rebbe says, there's amazing words. Mekai Mai doesn't mean Mekai Mai in Yerushalayim. B'Mekai Mai means in the place where Mashiach is, in his hometown, where he is. He builds a Migdash Ma'at, which is, as we said earlier, the Migdash Ma'at of the Nasi Hadoyer, of the main one, is considered the Beis Hamikdash. It's considered the mini Beis Hamikdash. And that Beis Hamikdash will be mislabish the other Beis Hamikdash. Then it will go to Yerushalayim. Let's read it inside. Ulay Yashloimar. Shemerum is Beloshen Rambam Behilchus Melech HaMashiach. In the laws of Melech HaMashiach, Ubana Migdash B'Mekoymai. He builds a Beis Hamikdash B'Mekoymai. The L'chayra, at first glance, Ma'u Atzayrech LaHashmiyeinu Kam. Why does he have to let us know over here? Shebinyan HaMikdash B'Mekoymai. That the building of the Beis Hamikdash is in its place. Why doesn't he tell you where it is? First of all, what's in the Gale? That in his place, he is hinting to Gam al Mekoymai. The Rebbe is not saying. See, the Rebbe is not saying it means only. First of all, the Rebbe is saying it's a remez. He's meram. It's definitely not the simple pshat in Rambam. The simple pshat in Rambam means he's building that he's Mashiach Vadai when he builds a Beis Hamikdash in Yerushalayim, or when it doesn't mean that he builds it, but he gets it built, whether by bringing it down from heaven or whatever it is. He gets the Beis Hamikdash built in Yerushalayim. That's the pashtus. But the Rebbe says it's also being merames. The Rambam is hinting to another Indian that Mekoy Moi means in his own place. It's even before he takes it to Yerushalayim. Roim is Gam also. On the place of Melech HaMashiach at the time of Golus, Lifnei Sharei Zeh Mashiach V'Vadai. Before he's Mashiach Vadai, he's still in Golus and he's doing all the work of Cheskas Mashiach. Hainu, what does that mean? Shebi Yoisoi Begolus. While Mashiach is in Golus. Now, how do we know Mashiach is in Golus? Maybe Mashiach is in Eretz Yisrael, not in Golus, because it says in the Gemara in Masechta Sanhedrin that Mashiach sits by the gates of Rome, which means Rome doesn't mean that's necessarily the city of Rome. In that time, Rome was the one that brought the Golus. It means wherever the Jewish people are subjugated in exile, that's where Mashiach sits with them. Shasham Yoshev, over there he sits Mamtin and he waits Mitzapeh, and he's every moment waiting. Legalist B'nai Yisrael to redeem the Jewish people and the Shechina from exile. What does Mashiach do while he is waiting and doing his work, preparatory work? Boine Melech HaMashiach Migdash Ma'at. Melech HaMashiach builds a small Beis Hamikdash. So who me'ein v'dugmas Hamikdash Yerushalayim, which is similar to the Beis Hamikdash. Doesn't mean that it's similar in appearance, actually. It's similar in the Kedusha. Just like we said, Beis Rabbeinu Shebebavel, or the shul of Shafi Yosef that was in Erdoi. Those two shul didn't look like the Beis Hamikdash Yerushalayim. Shafi Yosef actually had stones. But it's similar because it has the Kedusha. Similar to that. Shenosef Migdash v'Yasha Shom, when the Beis Hamikdash traveled there. That Mashiach has a special shul which is ha'achana, preparation for the future Beis Hamikdash. Sheyizgalat chila sham. What will happen? Now, the third Beis Hamikdash will then first reveal itself there. Some Yosef, and from there it will return. Ima Kadosh Baruch Hu, Ibnei Yisrael, Yerushalayim, the Beis Hamikdash will return with Mashiach Tzidkenu, with the Eibishter, with the Jewish people, from there to Yerushalayim. And that's the meaning. That's the meaning that Rebbe wants to say. The Derech Efshar, Yesh Loimar, don't say Derech Efshar, Yesh Loimar, the Rebbe is saying that that's included in the words of the Rambam, where the Rambam says that Mashiach is Yivne Beis Hamikdash B'Makom. Now, Ha'ara 38 is Gaval. In Ha'ara 38, I don't think you have the Ha'aris over here. I'm just going to share it with you. The Rebbe says, again, V'ula Yesh Loimar, maybe we can say, astounding, that there's a famous medrash that the Rebbe kept on quoting in 1991. In Tafshinun Aleph, the Rebbe kept on quoting the medrash that regarding the Persian Gulf War, that the year that Melech HaMashiach reveals himself, there's going to be great tension in the world, and the Jewish people are going to be scared. And the first half of the medrash, it says the Eibishter tells the Yidden, don't be afraid, the Giaz Mangulaschem. Hashem tells the Jewish people. Then Omer Rabbi Yitzchak, then the medrash continues, Rabbi Yitzchak says, that B'shasha Melech HaMashiach ba, at the time, literally at the time that Melech HaMashiach comes, Oimed al Gag Beis Hamikdash, he stands on the roof of the Beis Hamikdash, Umashmiya Lehem Yisrael, and he makes the Jewish people hear, and he tells them, Anavim, my humble ones, Egias Mangulas. So the Rebbe says, Ula Yesh Loimar, we can say that when it says that Moshiach stands on the roof of the Beis Hamikdash and he tells the Jewish people, Egias Mangulas, which Beis Hamikdash is it referring to? The Pashtus, it means he's standing on the third Beis Hamikdash. He has to, because Mashiach is going to build the third Beis Hamikdash. He stands on the third Beis Hamikdash and he's announcing to the Jewish people and telling them Egias Mangulas. But the Rebbe says it's very hard to say that. Because once, if it means that the third Beis Hamikdash is standing already, especially if it's standing already in Yerushalayim, imagine the Temple Mount is flattened, not the Temple Mount, the mosque that's on it now, is the gold dome is gone. And instead we have a Beis Hamikdash. And Mashiach is standing on the roof, and he's telling Jewish people, Yidden, the time of your redemption has arrived. What do you mean the time? The redemption is here already. And why does he have to tell them? Everybody knows. Everybody's singing and dancing in this Fabringens, and we're rolling in Mashke, and the place is going crazy. The world is turning over upside down. There's a Beis Hamikdash. It's on CNN and on Fox News and all the radio stations across the world. The BBC. Everybody's going crazy. The UN is going to drape. The whole world is going nuts. There's a third Beis Hamikdash standing. And Mashiach has to tell the Jewish people, Anavim, humble ones, the time where he has to go, they're all sleeping in their beds, and he's telling them, Giz Mangulas. So the Rebbe doesn't make sense. So the Rebbe says, no, when it says that he's standing on the roof of the Beis Hamikdash, which roof of which Beis Hamikdash, it's referring to his humble Beis Hamikdash. And not necessarily, before the third Beis Hamikdash is revealed, it's not revealed yet. It's called Beis Hamikdash because eventually this is going to be the place where the Beis Hamikdash is going to be in. And he stands on that roof. And the Rebbe explains, what does it mean on the roof? The roof doesn't mean that he's actually standing on the roof. The reason why it says on the roof, the Rebbe says, is because the Medrash wants you to know that it's not talking about the Beis Hamikdash in Yerushalayim. It's talking about the Beis Hamikdash, the prepared Beis Hamikdash in Chutz La'aretz. That's why it says, that's why it mentions the roof, because the roof of the Beis Hamikdash didn't have Kedusha. It doesn't have Kedusha. In the whole Beis Hamikdash, the roofs did not have Kedusha's Beis Hamikdash. So it's trying to tell you that it's in a place that's not Kadosh, but Kedusha's Beis Hamikdash, which is in Chutz La'aretz. That's where Mashiach tells the Jews. When is he telling this to the Jewish people? It doesn't have to be at the time of the Geula, but it can be at the time of when no one is dreaming of Mashiach. It's still deep in Golus, and the Jews are busy whatever they're busy with, and Mashiach is waking them up and telling him, Rabbi Sai, Yidin, Herzchaim, Higias Mangulas. The time of redemption has arrived. Like the Rebbe said, the Rebbe didn't only say it's happening, but the Rebbe actually said, happened already, the Rebbe said. Nun Aleph, the Rebbe said, this happened already. That it was already fulfilled, the Medrash. That Mashiach stands on the roof of the Beis Hamikdash and tells the Jewish people, Higias Mangulas. And that's Zman Gulas, the time of the Geula. It doesn't mean necessarily that the Geula is happening this second. The period of the Geula is starting now. And that makes sense that Mashiach is telling the Jewish people. He has to tell this to them. Okay. This is Siv Dalet. I'm going to do very quickly now Sif Hey and Sivov. I don't have zero because I'm using my phone for Zoom, and that was my only time thing. So if someone can post to me what time it is, so I know that how much time I have left and how much I can shorten this and stretch this out, or what exactly needs to happen over here. So if you can just let me know the time. I'm gonna wait till I get the time before I start, so I can see how much of a kitzer or a Zoom I need to do. This is Zoom. We should Zoom to the Geula. Doesn't seem like we're getting any feedback over here. Oh, it's 9:38. Perfect. Okay. So we have I'm gonna continue till 10 o'clock your time. So let me do this very quickly. So the Rebbe continues, and the Rebbe says, till now we emphasize the Maila of that place, the main Beis Hamikdash. The Rebbe says we emphasize very much that it's the place of the yeshiva. It's the place of learning. That's where you teach Torah. Since you teach Torah over there, that's the main place, Makam Hashras HaShechina. Fine. But since there is the main person who teaches Torah, and that is Rav, and that's Rabbi. The Rebbe now, however, wants to connect it, that it's also connected to the fact that, in other words, what makes Rav's shul a special shul, more unique than all other shuls, Rav, is not just that it's a central yeshiva, but it's one of the main ideas is that he is Rabbeinu. In other words, when Rabbi Lazar said which is the main shul, that it's related to the fact that Rav was Rabbeinu. What's the emphasis of Rabbeinu? The emphasis of Rabbeinu means that he's the Nasi of the Jewish people. He's the Nasi of the Jews. And the Rebbe says like this. You see, why does the Shekhinah B'chlal rest in the Beis Hamikdash? What's the reason the Shekhinah dwells in the Beis Hamikdash? The Shekhinah dwells in the Beis Hamikdash because the Shekhinah is inseparable from the Jewish people. The Eibishter loves us. And because Hashem loves us, that's why he dwells amongst us, because he loves us. So like you see, actually, when the Eibishter tells us to build the Beis Hamikdash, what does he say? Also the Migdash, and Hashem spills the beans right away. He really wants to say, please let me into your heart. I want to. I can't be without you. But he goes, okay, make me a sanctuary. But he right away, it's almost like Hashem slips. Chas v'shalom. I don't need this. But what I'm saying, because it's almost like the Eibishter loves us so much he can't control himself. And instead of saying v'asani migdash v'shachanti b'soichai, he says v'asani migdash v'shachanti b'soicham. I want to be with you. So the whole Beis Hamikdash, because God wants to be with us. Hashem wants to be with us. Fine. So the Rebbe says, why did the Eibishter, and we find another passage that when it speaks about Shalish Regalim, it says 3 times a year, B'voyik, the Lashon over there, B'voyik kol, you can see that the Beis Hamikdash is special because it says, B'voyik kol Yisrael v'leiros es pnei Hashem l'kefa b'makam asher yivchar. What the Eibishter chose that place for is Hashem made a place where he can have all Jews. What Hashem wants is every Yid to come together. Hashem wants all Yidin zusammen. And that happened in the Beis Hamikdash. That was Grand Central Station where all the Jewish people came. Because all the Jewish people came there, the Eibishter also comes. So the Rebbe therefore says, what's the Inyan of Migdash Ma'at? What's the Milo of every shul? And every shul is also Hashras HaShechina. Why is there Hashras HaShechina in every shul? Because in a shul there are 10 Jews. And when there are 10 Jews, it's like all the Jews are there. He brings from a mimer from the Alter Rebbe. He doesn't bring it inside. He brings it in the Haaretz. Look it up in the mimer. Where the Alter Rebbe explains the reason why the Eibishter was in the Beis Hamikdash was because all Jews were there. And the reason why Hashem is a little bit in every shul is because in regular shuls there's only a few Jews. When there is an assembly of a minority of Jews, of a few Yidden, then there is a minor revelation of Shekhinah. When there is a lot of Jews, there is a major revelation of Shekhinah. So all shuls have the presence of Hashem because there's, and then Alter actually explains how 10 is as if all Yidden are there, because in 10 you have every type of Jew, because it's comprising to the 10 series. But of course we understand the difference of having like everybody or everybody. So in the Beis HaMikdash, everybody was there. So the Shekhinah was fully there. The Rebbe says in these words, the Rebbe says, when you have Ala Yidden, you have the whole Shekhinah. When you have a chelik of Klal Yisrael, you have a kiviyachol, the Rebbe says, a chelik of the Shekhinah is within. Now, is there a place in Golos, during the time of Golos, we're scattered? Is there a place where you have all the Jews present? Even in Golos. The Rebbe says, yeah, only one place. And that's in the shul of the Nasi Hador. Since HaNasi Hu HaKoil, since the Nasi Hador is Kechol Hador, and the Nasi, as we know, is a Neshama Kalelis that includes all Neshamas. So if the Nasi Hador is in a certain shul, it says all Yidden are there. Again, we said every minyan is a little bit like if everybody. But in the Nasi, it's everybody. So it's, therefore, it's Hashras HaShechina in his shul is more than Hashras HaShechina in every other shul. Because in all shuls, you only have a few Jews. In the Nasi Hador shul, you have all the Jews because you have the Nasi Hador, and he's like all the Jews. And that's the emphasis of Beis Rabbeinu. Because he's our Rebbe. Rebbe meaning he's including all Neshamas inside of him. He has a whole generation in him. And that's why the Shekhinah dwells. That's the Maila of Beis Rabbeinu. So it's earlier we attributed it to the fact that he's teaching Torah there. It's the main place of Torah. Here the Rebbe is talking about it's Be'ikr Mitzad, the fact of the Neshama of the Nasi that includes the Neshamas of all the Jewish people. Okay, that's V'oid Ve'ikr. The Rebbe continues. The Rebbe says, that's during the time of Golos. During the time of Geula, remember the Maila of Beis Rabbeinu Shebabavo is both a Maila during Golos and during the time of the Geula. So during the time of Golos, the Maila is that the Nasi, he's like the whole generation. So in the Beis HaMikdash, Hashem was able to be in the Makom HaMikdash because all Jews came there. In the Zman HaGolos, there's the Nasi over there, and because there's, by the way, the Rebbe says, in addition to the fact that where the Nasi is in general, more people come. A lot of Jews come there because people seek out the counsel of the Nasi. So B'chlal, a lot of Yidden come there more than other places. But in addition to that, even if the people don't come, the Nasi himself has all Jews inside him. That's Zman HaGolos. How does this also reflect during the time of the Geulah? The Rebbe says like this: this Rabbeinu, whoever the Rabbeinu is, this Rabbeinu, is not just the Rebbe of the Jewish people during the Zman HaGolos, but he has a more important job. What's his more important job? He is actually the Goyel of the Jewish people. The Nasi of the generation, he is the Mashiach of the generation. And the Rebbe says, where do you see that? From the first Nasi. Moshe Rabbeinu was the first Nasi of the Jewish people, the first leader of the Jewish people. When the Jewish people became a people, Moshe was their first leader. So he wasn't only the caretaker of the Jewish people in Mitzrayim, he did take care of them. He got them Shabbos, he did a lot of things for them. He ready when he was he took care of them. He was the go-to man. I mean, he wasn't there most of the time. Aaron was there, but he was the Nasi of the Jewish people during the time of Golos, to hear their pains and to go, to take care of them and to daven and do all that. The Nasi. But what was his main objective as the Nasi? That he has to be the Goyal of the Jewish people. And therefore, and the Rebbe says that's true about the Goyal Rishoni, Goyal Achron, and that's throughout all the ages. How do you know that's throughout all the ages? The Rebbe says it is known that in every generation, the Rebbe brings from the Chassam Sofer, there is Echad Aroim Etzidkasei Liyas Goyal. There's one person who's ra'ui, who's fitting to be the redeemer of the Jewish people. When the time will come, the Eibishter will reveal himself to him and will send him. And the Rebbe is showing us that the Goyel, the redeemer of the Jewish people, there's always a Mashiach in every generation. Fine. But here the Rebbe says something so magnificent. He says, now who that Mashiach? Is he a hidden Jew that's maybe a tailor in some street corner or in an alleyway in Yerushalayim? There is a Mashiach sitting there that's a shoemaker. He's a tzaddik nister that no one knows of, or some hidden Kabbalist living in Tzvas, or in some other cave somewhere that no one knows. Or are we talking about, or is this Mashiach that is ready to redeem the Jewish people, a known figure. The Rebbe says, Mistaber Loimer. Again, I'm not saying my own things. There's all the words in the Mugad Yisich. Mistaber Loimer, that this Mashiach, who's supposed to be the redeemer of the Jewish people, he's actually the Nasi of the generation. Like, how do you see that? The Gemara says so. The Gemara says regarding Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, Rabbeinu HaKadosh, that Rav says if he's from the living, then he's Rabbeinu HaKadosh. And Rabbeinu HaKadosh was the leader of the generation. So we're not talking some obscure person. We're talking about a person that is known. And then the Rebbe brings on the bottom that since Rav said it on Rebbe, the same applies to Rav, because when a person says it on someone else, it applies to himself as well. So Rav, who is in our case, when it says Beis Rabbeinu Shebabel, it's actually Rav. So Rav as well was also the Mashiach of the generation. Not just in Rebbe's generation, Rav was a student of Rebbe. So Rav said it was Rabbeinu HaKadosh, who was the Mashiach. Now the Rebbe says, and Rav was the Mashiach of his generation. Now, since his primary inyan as Rabbeinu is to be the Goyel of the Jewish people, so therefore, regarding the Migdash Ma'at that he establishes, again, his house is also the Beis HaMikdash. His main objective is not to provide a Migdash for the Jewish people during the time of Golus, but his main objective is to transition those small Batei Migdash into the third Beis HaMikdash. His main objective is to encourage the Jewish people to complete their avodah in Golus. And today is talking about all the Mashiachs throughout all the generations. The one leader that was always the Mashiach of the generation. His Beis HaMikdash and his shaykhs to the Beis HaMikdash was not stam that there should be a mess during the time of Golus, Chas v'Shalom, for another 1,000 years we should sit here and be comfortable and have. No. His main drive is to be the Goyel. So what is his main objective regarding the Beis HaMikdash? To make sure that all these Batei Mikdash get connected to the third Beis HaMikdash. So that he can then, remember we said earlier that that Beis HaMikdash is going to be that Beis HaMedrash, which is that main base. That's the main Beis HaMikdash in Bavel, is going to click and connect to the third Beis HaMikdash first, and through it connect all the others. But the Rebbe explains that too is his avodah. It's not that it happens on its own. His inyan is to make all Batei Mikdash connect. How does he do that? The Rebbe says he does that by making shuls everywhere across the world. In other words, by encouraging the Jewish people to make all of the world into Eretz Yisrael. Once all the world is Eretz Yisrael, then all these shuls can connect to, can automatically connect to the Beis HaMikdash, because the Beis HaMikdash is going to spread all over Yerushalayim. So once they're in Eretz Yisrael, they become connected to one of the chidushim that I saw in the Sikha today that I haven't seen till now is that one of the things that Rebbe is explaining is that to take all the Batei shuls and to connect it to the Beis HaMikdash, you have a problem. How are you going to get them to Yerushalayim? They're in Chutz La'aretz. There is a space. There's a disconnect. There's a block. There's the lands of the nations which are unholy. So the Rebbe already fixes it, because the Rebbe says that the job over here is that through making shuls everywhere, across the whole world, encouraging the Jewish people to open shuls and yeshivas, and the Rebbe adds to make their private homes into small Beit HaMikdash, to put some tzedakah pushkas and all these inyanim, which is one of the things that Rebbe kept on encouraging and teaching us to do. By doing that, we make all the lands, we make everywhere Eretz Yisrael. So once you make everywhere Eretz Yisrael, there's no separation. Then these all shuls that are in Eretz Yisrael already just have to connect to Yerushalayim, because the Beis HaMikdash is going to be in Yerushalayim to receive all these Batei Mikdash, and together it all goes to Eretz Yisrael. It reveals itself in the third Beis HaMikdash. Based on all of that, and Siv Vav and Siv Zayin, the Rebbe says, based on all of this, let's talk about our generation. Let's talk about our generation, the Rebbe says. In our generation, this is the house of Kvod Kedushas Mordechai Admon Asidareinu. It's the Frierdiker Rebbe. And Bahagdem, the Rebbe says, let me first preface why. The Frierdiker Rebbe said that Lubavitch went to 10 Goliaths. Just like the Sanhedrin traveled to 10 places, Lubavitch was uprooted, and it means the Rabbeim went to 10 exiles. Initially, for over 103 years, the headquarters of the revelation of Pnimius HaTorah, the revelation of Torah in the world, Pnimius HaTorah, was in Lubavitch. Then from there it went to Rostov, from Rostov to St. Petersburg, from Petersburg it went out of the to Latvia, to Riga, it went to Poland, until it came to America. That's what the Frierdiker Rebbe says in the Sikh. The Rebbe says an amazing thing. And then in America itself, it came to many few places. And finally, 770 was bought. And as I mentioned at the beginning of the class, 770 was bought actually 80 years ago. From 3 days ago was the 80th anniversary. Okay. So what happened? And even after the Frierdiker Rebbe's passing, and the Frierdiker Rebbe spent in 770, the Rebbe says 10 years. Even after the Frierdiker Rebbe's passing, the work of the Frierdiker Rebbe continued, and not standard, it continued, it actually accelerated. Malan b'kodesh, it became even stronger. Okay, and it's continuing to get stronger and stronger until Bias Goyal said. Right. So the Rebbe says, what's the Inyan Shabbat? What's the Nekudo here? What's the Pnimius? So the Rebbe says like this, just like I'm sorry. He says, Lubavitch went, the Frierdiker Rebbe came to America, but the Rebbe says that's similar to the Jewish people in general. The Jewish people in general were first in Europe, and just recently they came to America. When they came to America, the Rebbe says, today's days, you have most of the Jewish people living in America. So the Rebbe says, since most of the Jewish, and the Rebbe says, that's the reason the Frierdiker Rebbe came to America, was because since most of the Jewish people were being relocated to the United States, the Nasi Hadar goes together with the Jewish people. So the Nasi Hadar, the Frierdiker Rebbe also came to America. So it's understood that where did the Shechina go? The Shechina used to be in Europe. First it was in Babel, then it was in Europe for sure, because that's where most Jews were. And then from Europe, where did the Shechina move? To the United States of America. Because most of the Jewish people are there, and the Nasi Hadar is there. And we're itself in the shul of the Nasi Hadar. And Beis Rabbeinu, the Rebbe says Beis Rabbeinu 770, which is Bedugmas Bei Kenushta de Hutzel. It's similar to those special two shuls that we mentioned earlier. And that's where the Shechina is, and that's where the Beis HaMikdash is. And from that Beis HaMikdash, which is 770, the Shechina is dwelling in all other shuls. It's dwelling, its headquarters, its main Wi-Fi station is 770, and from there it's going out to the entire world. The Rebbe says, what's the explanation? Why did this happen? So the Rebbe says, because since we're coming to the end, why did it come dafka to America? So the Rebbe gives the beer. The Rebbe says, since our avodah is to elevate the entire world, so after we've done Torah mitzvahs for thousands of years, that it came time to get the last job done, we had to come to the lower half of the world, because in order to lift up a building, you have to lift it up from the bottom. So that's why the Shechina, the Jewish people, the Frierdiker Rebbe all came to the United States, because the United States is considered Chatzi Kader Atach, the lower half of the globe, where Matan Torah didn't happen. And we had to lift it up from the very bottom and bring it upward. And that is the avodah of the Frierdiker Rebbe coming to America and lifting up the entire world. And that's why the Nasi Hadar is here. And therefore the Rebbe says, let me consider here. Hold on. Asida, and that which causes Eretz Yisrael to expand over the whole of the entire world, and then once that happens, all Batei Mikdashim all Batei Midrashis and all yeshivas are going to connect to the third Beis HaMikdash through what? Mechuber leBeis HaMikdash, B'Gula Mitzvah Shleim Adim Shezis, yeah. Through the Nasi Hadar, through Mashiach, who is Mashiach Shebedor. Va'oid v'gam ze'ikr shehu anasi the Teres HaChasidus. That this Nasi Hadar that we're talking about is the Nasi of Teres HaChasidus, which through Chasidus, the Geula comes. This brings the Geula. While Pizah Muvan, the Rebbe says, the greatness of Beis Rabbeinu, of 770, Migdash Ma'at, Shanasa Migdash V'Yashasha, that the Beis HaMikdash traveled over there. And this Gufa, 770, the Rebbe says, the place of the Nasi Hadar, the last Nasi, that has to complete the work of lifting the entire world up. This is the place of the Beis HaMikdash de La'asid. And not only that, Shaboyis Gala Migdash Asa. The third Beis Hamikdash will reveal itself first in 770, Umisham Yashav Yerushalayim, and from there it's going to return to Yerushalayim. Then the Rebbe goes ahead in Sif Zayin, which I don't have time to really go through, and the Rebbe connects it to the two names of the Friedrich Rebbe, Yosef and Yitzchak. Yosef means to gather the Jewish people from all over the world, and which is, as we said over here, is that the idea to plant Batei Mikdash everywhere, and then to gather them and connect them to the third Beis Hamikdash. Yitzchak has to do with the laughter that's going to be when Mashiach comes. And then the Rebbe goes in to explain the name of 770, Beis Rabbeinu. What's its name? It's called 770. The Rebbe says in Ha'ara, it's called Shivim Shiv in Hebrew. In Lashon HaKodesh, it's called how do they call it? The Rebbe says Sheva Meis V'Shivim. In Yiddish, it's called Zibn Zibitzik, and in English, he says it's called 770. And the Rebbe goes on to explain why 770 represents this idea, the completion of fixing the entire world, because the world is made up of seven. The Rebbe says time and space is made up of seven. When Mashiach comes, Mashiach Tzidkenu has to gather the Jewish people from 7 continents. So the shleimus of the Pa'ula of fixing the world is related to the name 770. And that's why it's connected to it represents the culmination. That's the point. The completion and the culmination of all the Jewish people throughout all of history. It culminates in a building called 770, because 770 is what does the completion. It does the final makabah patish, to complete the final rectification of all of time and space, which is represented in the number 770. And the Rebbe says that's why 770 is also gematria paratsta, because once paratsta is what Mashiach has to do, he has to break the boundaries, especially the boundaries of Yerushalayim, that the whole world becomes holy. And the Beis Hamikdash too, the Rebbe says, the boundaries of the Beis Hamikdash, that it's going to include all shuls. They all become part of that. That's all part of, and it starts with 770, which is Gematria Paratsta. The Rebbe also says in the Ha'ara that 770, Gematria Paratsta, is also Gematria Beis Mashiach. This is the final station, the Rebbe says, in which everything comes together and everything becomes unified. Therefore, the Rebbe says it's very important that everybody help out in everybody that can help out in the renovations that are happening in 770. Anything that anybody can do, it's a mitzvah for everybody to be involved and help. And because at that time the Rebbe they laid the cornerstone to expand 770, because it's the same kind of a chiyuv like building the third Beis Hamikdash, because the 770 and the third Beis Hamikdash, Hainu Hach, they're both connected to each other, because the Makam Hamikdash of 770, that is Beis Hamikdash B'La'asim. I rushed through the last few sifim, especially Zayin and Ches, and I would highly recommend that everybody fill it and learn it well, learn it with the Ha'aris, because it's amazing, amazing inyanim. And we merit already on this Chamishas of Tu B'Av, there should be already the revelation of the third, now that the 770 is already 80, hit its 80th year. It's already all the shleimus impossible, the shleimus of the future redemption. May we see already the complete Geula fully revealed. The Rebbe should be completely in his Gala revealed, and we should see already the full revelation of alle gute Sachen. The Golus should be a distant dream, and alle singen and tanzen Yerushalayim forever and ever. Thanks for listening. Now, I'm here. If someone has shilas or questions, I did a lot of talking, but I hope it's a little bit clear.
Hello.
Yes.
I heard a question. How is it possible that after learning this thoroughly, there isn't a humongous, huge campaign to renovate 770 properly? If we feel like Hinezebo Farba, doesn't it seem like the Rebbe wanted it physically to be expanded and ready for this transition?
I would have thought so that if the Rebbe put that out, that in such a sikha, such a mugadig sikha, that there should have been a much greater response in the expansion of 770. And I think that's what the Rebbe wanted and wants. Now, why it didn't happen, I don't know.
So it's nicht looking for
and for the fact that it's not done,
if we're groping in the dark for what's left to do, and we have to show that we are really ready, why wouldn't this be one of the top 10 things at least?
Yep. Now, what exactly? I guess the Rebbe just wanted an expansion so that more Yidden can come there. It can be nicer and bigger. I mean, it's not that it has to be built in any specific way. I'm just saying. Someone will say.
What did he mean by the renovations? He didn't just when he said renovations. I don't think he just meant to add more restrooms. No. And the Hanachas of Anapina was like huge. That was huge.
Listen, when you come to Tishrei, there is actually
there's not enough room. There shouldn't be enough room.
So it's interesting. Just a few months ago, there was a campaign on doing renovations, which they did. A few months ago, there was a campaign to do renovations in 770, and they did. Not on a grand scale, but they did do. And then Rabbi Yossi Jacobson came and taught Beis Rabbi. They brought, in order to enhance the campaign, they brought Rabbi Jacobson to come and teach this Beis Rabbeinu Shebabano. But I think that commensurate with what the Rebbe is saying over here, the koch and the chayas in this Indian should be on a higher this should happen. Yeah.
We're approaching the anniversary of the Hanachas of Anapina. I think it was Yud Zayin Elul?
In Elul.
Tashin Memches.
Memches.
So we're already now Memches.
Mm-hmm.
It was the Rebbe came out in a silk kapata, and he himself, remember, I was there, he physically lifted he didn't let anybody help him, he physically lifted the stone. But I have another question also. You mentioned that the actual makrim is not holy, it's more the structure that has the kedusha. But the Rebbe put the stone in the ground, actually.
So once the Rebbe put
it,
maybe it's
the ground also becomes.
Yeah, no, but the reason why I mentioned that is because the Maharsha is saying, the Rebbe brings from the Maharsha over here that these places are holy only till the time of the Geulah. Then the Shechina leaves. He brings the Lashon over here. Once the Ashras Shechina b'chol makom shebalo Yisrael yidei midrash ma'at shebarotzei shebo sham einoi elo b'zman hagolos. אבל לאחרי שעשיתם לגול, תחזור גילו שכינה לירושלים, ולא תישאר שם במקום שגול ישראל כבר. The Shechina will not remain in that place. Hainu, שלא תהיה אשרוס השכינה במקום בחוץ לארץ, in the place of חוץ לארץ, שעליו עומד המקדש מעט. It doesn't have that holiness. Even Shamigdash Ma'at Ya'akim Ma'akim. The Rebbe says it specifically. But he says, that's why it says in the Medrash that the actual structures are going to come along.
Mm-hmm.
The buildings themselves are going to come along. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, Shukayach, everybody, for whoever organized, and thank you, Rabbi Will. We should have this, so the whole thing should be in the most revealed sense. We should see all this happening.
Yes, and I think everybody should join as much as we can, the Hisoidus that's getting stronger and stronger, primarily amongst the women. The women are doing an unbelievable job, especially with Welcome Mashiach groups, and whoever can help in any way possible in expand the activities, both begufay, b'mamoinoi, b'neumai, as the Rebbe says, in all different ways of helping. Because one thing is for sure, and this is related to Tezvav Ba'ov, is that just like the women were the ones who went out and did the Gemara describes how the celebration of the 15th of Shaykh to the women. So the women are the ones who have to drive all these inyanim. And Baruch Hashem, they're doing a good job, and they should just increase, and more people should be participating. As Hashem, you're seeing clearly there's so much Mashiach consciousness happening in the world now, in the Ganzaville, not outside of Lubavitch. And so Lubavitch for sure has to ratchet it up. And the women in Lubavitch on a much higher level, even than what has been happening to now. And it needs to be done, of course, ba'ofen hamiskabel, ba'ofen that is right, but let's get things moving, as a Hashem. Okay. May we see the Geula take it from the Admonish.
Amen.